Hey, Jeremy. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Jeremy, this is so funny that we are here together. I was thinking about it, and we met over a decade ago networking. I mean, what power of networking, am I right?
You are totally right. It's funny you bring that up because someone was asking me this morning how I got the job at Squarespace, and it was networking. I could trace it back like 3 networking events before it got me the coffee that led to a couple more coffees that ultimately got me here 11 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we chatted briefly before we decided to do this interview, and we were like, when was that? Like, what year was that? So I was like, wait a second. Gmail knows all. Gmail does not forget. So I just searched your name, and guess who introduced us?
Who's that?
Craig Delsack. Do you remember Craig Delsack?
Craig Delsack. I think I do.
Yep. And we all went to some event together with David Title. And I was just looking through these emails like, oh my God, blast from the past, these names. So it's just fun. And that was in 2012.
And here we are.
And here we are. And you've been in New York the whole time because you've been working at Squarespace since then. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm a lifelong New Yorker a couple of times, college out of town, living abroad a couple of times. But the last 12 years, my wife and I have been here in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Wait, you're not from New York, are you?
I'm from Westchester.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it counts.
My wife, who's from Brooklyn, is not sure that it counts, but
okay.
we'll count it.
Well, I'm also from here, but we try to be nice to you guys. Tell me a little bit. You guys stayed through the pandemic and everything. What was that like? Like, what has kept you here? Is it your wife?
I mean, part of it is, my wife and our family. She's from here. My family's from here. And I always say that New York is not just New York for us. It's also our hometown. So, like, whatever New York straw is, it's also got that on top of it. I just love New York. I love walking. I love biking. I love what you encounter when you're out and about. I'm from the suburbs originally. I didn't mind growing up there. But, this is just so comfortable and right for me. And I say about, I've had friends like, son, you got to move out to LA. And I say, just as soon as LA has a subway system, I'll think about it. Because I'm not about to start driving.
No, we hate LA because we're East Coasters, even though it's beautiful and nice and such easier living. Okay, cool. Well, I just love that you're here and you're at Squarespace. And right when I met you, you had just started there. We were about to start. And we were like, we just started using Squarespace. We build all our websites on Squarespace. So I feel like we've been living this parallel life while you've been building this company. Your current title is Director Channel Partner Business. Is that right?
That's right.
Tell me what that means.
Yeah, I mean, so you are our channel partner. So when you think about Squarespace and sort of how we what we offer and how we distribute our product, you're thinking of a easy-to-use SaaS product to help you build websites. And mostly we distribute it direct to consumers. So someone's hearing a podcast and that's how they realize, oh yeah, I should be using Squarespace. Or they see a Super Bowl ad and like, oh, I should go check that out. But what we found, and I bet that you guys were part of our inspiration or part of my inspiration way back when. What we found is that in the course of building this really amazing website builder and now email marketing tool and all the other things we do that was meant for consumers, we'd actually built this really powerful creative tool for professionals. I started encountering these early adopters like you and Steve and others, people who had just sort of had their aha moment of, I guess I can design websites now. Or maybe I've always been doing them on WordPress, but this is a much easier thing for me. So yeah, about 8 years ago, I went to our CEO and said, we've got these people out there who are selling Squarespace for us. Let's formalize this. Let's recognize them. And, the first thing we did was kind of give them a name. So we called it the Circle Program. And so people who were doing this professionally could join and get a couple of perks. And it was really interesting. I remember having kind of customer interview calls way back when where I'd get on the phone with agencies like you, people who'd been building lots of sites. I'd be like, so I see you've built 10 websites on Squarespace. Tell me about that. And a lot of times the first response was like, I'm sorry, am I not supposed to do that? And I was like, no. They thought, we were building this do-it-yourself tool, consumers, and they thought I was upset with them that they were using it as in their client work. And in fact, I was like, no, tell me more. How could I serve you better? How can we find more people like you? So that was 8 years ago, and it started out really small, and it was really just about some content and community way back when. And now it's become a bigger part of the business, and it's the kind of thing that gets mentioned on earnings calls as a public company, and it's something I'm really proud of.
That is so cool, Jeremy. And I definitely remember having multiple conversations with you about this because we were using it for our clients, and I had like this direct line to you, and I was like, well, we'd love it if it had this. We'd love it if it had this. And this is a challenge for us. So I just remember being like really excited that I could tell based on our conversations that you were clearly working with a company that was like, yeah, no, we want to improve it for you guys.
Yeah, and I think Squarespace is the kind of company that's always listening to its users. And I think what's been really great about working on this part of the business is that it's still at a small, and even though it's a pretty big scale, it's still at a small enough scale that there's, pro users and circle members that we know by name. There's Paul and there's Christine, and there's these people who, they either have a direct line to us, or they're active in our forum, or they're just the kind of people who are out there creating content. And it's really been amazing to watch the community grow up around what we've been doing here.
Yeah, I love that. And there's a lot of content online, people sharing tips and, here's how to get around that. And certainly, our thing has always been that we wanted to build these custom and bespoke and really powerful brands and websites for our clients. But that doesn't mean we want to build it from scratch. I mean, we were never coders. So that was,
you don't want to build it from scratch, and you don't want to. First of all, you don't need to. And second of all, you are creative people. You want to use your brains. You don't want your old clients getting back in touch with you to say, how do I fix a security patch? Or how do I update the photo that you loaded 3 years ago? That's a way to make money. And, that's important. That's an important work to do. But I think the kinds of professionals that we attract are the ones who want to be working with the clients really on establishing their brand, creating this beautiful websites, not on the long-term maintenance, which ultimately is better for the client to do because they know their business. They know, how to manage it in a way that you, their web designer from way back when, can't and won't.
Oh my gosh. Well, back in 2012, 2013, 2014, when there was this shift, because I know from our experience, when we moved to Squarespace, or we found Squarespace, or I don't know, Steve must have found it. It was like, finally, we're not beholden to the web developers anymore. Finally, we can actually make the thing we want and not have to be talking to these coders about pixels. We can just make it exactly what we want. It was so freeing.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the shocking miracle of Squarespace. Like I said earlier, in the course of building this easy-to-use, consumer-friendly tool, we also built a thing that people who really have a strong aesthetic sensibility and strategic mindset and really want to do interesting, creative things, they could do it on this very same platform that, the proverbial mom could build her own website on.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, just to go back to one thing you said about the, having to contact your webmaster because a JPEG is no longer there or something broke. I mean, I have been railing against that for 10 plus years because some people stayed stuck in that because they felt like, but that's ongoing revenue. I'm like, it's almost immoral at this point because, it's like out of integrity because you don't have to do that. So are you just like holding somebody's website hostage so you can make more money off of them? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I'm going to assume good intent, but I agree with you. Even putting aside I agree with you in a lot of what you're saying, but putting that aside, even if it is all good intent, who wants to spend their days updating websites, doing nothing? Who want to be, doing
value?
It's low value for them. And ultimately, as a way to spend your day in your life, pushing buttons on behalf of somebody else is just not that creative or that interesting. And I think that's like freeing people of that sort of work, I think is part of the attraction of the platform.
I completely agree. And I think that creatives really want to get back to being creative. Actually, that brings up a good point. It's been interesting because as Squarespace and other platforms have allowed creatives to build websites without coding or all of these things, there's been this push-pull where I think creatives wonder if they're going to lose clients because now they can do it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I have never felt that way. I'm curious what the Squarespace position is, or like just what your personal opinion is on that movement. The easier it gets, are the creatives going to lose their clients or what?
I mean, I think we've been having the same question and hearing the same thing for a long time. Yeah. And, the way I put it is, and I think it's, even internally, the very fact of us, Squarespace, having this sort of pro-user vertical, given our position in the market as an easy-to-use, do-it-yourself software, I think even internally, early on, there was some defensiveness about that, of like, well, why? Obviously, the solution to all of this is we need to make our product easier, even more intuitive to use. And the fact that there's pro users doing it for their clients means that the product needs to be better for the clients. And I would say to people, it's not a product issue. This is not a problem that can be solved with the product. We can make it, I would say, like if we had the platonic ideal of a do-it-yourself software where all that would have to happen is just read my mind and then built exactly the website that was in my mind. And then my wife, Emma, who's a creative director, is right next to me and it reads her mind. It's easy. We could both do it, but her website is going to be better than mine 100 times out of 100 because it's not about can I get the photo up there? It's not about, can I change the color of the button or the location of the CTA? It's which photo and how should you crop it? And where do you want the copy to land on it? And what's your CTA? And I worked on a project 2 years ago and we thought the right CTA was get started, but it was actually, let's get going and let's use that knowledge that I have as a pro user. I'm going to incorporate that into your project. So I think it's great. Obviously, that's sort of the bread and butter of our business, is that it's easy to use. Anyone can come off the street and build a website. But I think for the fact that pro users and experienced people bring that level of experience and sophistication, and also people are just busy and they've got other things to do with their time, and especially small business people who tend to be the clients of our partners. Sure, if you're a plumber, you could learn how to use Squarespace, but you've got your plumbing business to work on. And, one thing I find really interesting actually is people early on, a really rich vein of clients for Squarespace pros have been tradespeople. So contractors, plumbers, people like that. And I think as I've thought about it, I think if you're a plumber, you really know the value. Sure, people can do their DIY plumbing, but if you're a professional, you know that you should hire a professional. And I think as if you're a plumber and you're thinking about your website, you're like, yeah, I can do it myself, but I know the value of a professional. So yeah, I mean, my view on it is that yes, of course, we as a company are going to continue to make the product easier and more powerful to use. And that's almost entirely unrelated to whether there's going to be demand for pro users to build websites for clients on Squarespace. They're just solving different problems.
I could not agree more. I mean, this is, arguably it's the easiest to use as it's ever been. And we're actually in the middle of a $40,000 website project that we're going to spend a week doing. And that's it, and it's not because she couldn't figure it out. It's because of all the other decisions that are made, to your point.
Because you're going to add $40,000 of value. And the value, again, going back to what we were saying earlier, is not your ability to push the buttons in the right order. It's your, I don't know, however long you all have been doing this, your 15, 20 years of experience. That's what she's buying for $40,000. It ultimately gets embodied in the website, but the website is actually capturing so much more. That's not about anything technology. It's really about strategy and execution.
I totally agree. I started using the word curation for designers because I think as design has become more and more accessible, great design, I mean, you can go on Canva, things are already designed and you can just use it. Great design is out there. It's deciding which great design is the right fit for this business.
It's great design. It's great design. It's differentiated design.
Yep.
Right? The art director at Squarespace, if you gave me 100 photos and you gave them 100 photos to pick for an ad campaign we're going to do, the art director at Squarespace is going to do a better job picking out the right photo, the one that's most on brand, the one that's most relevant, the most resonant. And really, I agree with you. It is about curation. Okay, it's all out there, but which one are you going to do? That's the hard part. And which one's going to speak to your brand and speak to your customer? Which one's going to represent your brand? And those are not, I don't think, ultimately problems or questions that are susceptible to technology. I think it really is about creativity and experience. And I think that's what, that is what they're buying for $40,000 or $5,000, whatever the service is costing.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And I also think it should be encouraging to creatives because the knife you need to sharpen is your strategic mind, your eye, your taste, your marketing know-how and messaging know-how. These are the kinds of skills you need to move into because you don't need to be tinkering with the production part, which wasn't true 15 years ago. 15 years ago, I worked with a lot of web developers who also did designed their websites that were horrible, and it was that was worth it because they didn't exist otherwise. You had to build it. So I just think it's an exciting time for creatives, time to level up and start learning these much more interesting spaces.
And I think, when I think about our pro user community at Squarespace, they also are the ones who push the platform further than even we know you can do with it. So we've got our templates. They're really cool. They're really interesting. The people who do the most innovating things are the tens of thousands of Circle members out there who are just tinkering and pushing and being like, well, if I combine this element with this element, all of a sudden I've got a brand new thing, and nobody at Squarespace thought about it. But it's really just, it's not 1,000 monkeys and 1,000 typewriters, but it really is sort of the wisdom of the crowd, finding innovative things to do with the product if you're in it and you're really being creative. And then I think a thing we've done really well is, and what I heard on those interviews, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, when I was talking to pro users is, I love using Squarespace, but I need to talk to people about this. I want to compare notes. And I think kind of that is really, there's like a really powerful flywheel there also. When you get experienced professional people talking to each other, they level each other up and they continue to push the platform.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I remember different things that Steve used to do. We call it breaking the template. Right. So find the template, but then you're using a PNG here, or you're using a bigger banner to, before the parallax was completely ingrained, like almost creating a parallax type of experience, or, just playing with these elements to make it a little, because people are so scared about the template, which I feel like is actually, people aren't talking about that anymore, but like maybe 5 years ago, it was like, oh, don't want a template.
Right.
It's like, well, now it's like, well, just use the template. It's what you do with it.
Right, exactly. I mean, it turns out that a yoga website's a yoga website is a yoga website, and like it's a solved problem. Like, how do you create a good yoga website? It's solved. We've solved the structural, the information architecture. It's really ultimately going to be: is it reflecting your brand? Is it talking to the right customer? Are you not getting in your own way? Is it? And then sort of on the technical side, is it? You have your SEO stuff set up and sort of that sort of stuff. But, the templatized thing, it's interesting. You want the structure to be really templatized because like I said, it's kind of a solved problem. And then it's what you put on top of it to make it really interesting. And I think, the team that works on what we call expressibility, so like kind of like what you can design with Squarespace, they'll take a lot of inspiration from what they're seeing Squarespace Pro users doing with custom CSS. And they're like, oh, we're seeing a lot of this, they're pushing on this thing. This is sort of, they're pulling us forward. Let's productize that. Let's make that a native feature so that, okay, now everybody can do it. And what you see then is there's still the next thing and the next thing that pro users are pushing us on. So they find a way, and I think, part of what makes it so powerful, 99% is going to be natively built in Squarespace. And then, a little CSS here, a little JavaScript to create a little moment, a little vibe, to make it a little bit different, a little bit distinct, is, I think, what makes it really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys clearly, my audience are your people. They're pro users, right? They're using it for all of their clients. And I know that's really your mission. Can you tell me a little bit more about, what kind of drives you guys? What is the goal?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I mean, like I said earlier, I've been at the company for 11 years, and a question you get when you're at a company for 11 years is, what are you still doing there? And there's a couple of answers. So one, yeah, right.
I'm watching you grow.
Yeah, right. I mean, so one answer is, well, when I started here 11 years ago, we were 100 people. Now we're 2,000 people. So it's technically the same company, but obviously a lot's happened. But the other is, I've always felt that Squarespace is, we're obviously a for-profit company, but really mission-driven. And I think our kind of corporate mission is help creative entrepreneurs succeed online. And I always just say, sort of shorthand, as we help people do their thing. And what a nice way to spend your day. And then, my team, our mission is to help creative professionals build sustainable businesses by helping their clients succeed online. And again, so it's really kind of a meta level of all these tens of thousands. And again, it's your audience, it's your students who are trying to do their thing and need a good tool and need good support and need a little incentive here and there and need an event to come to every now and then, and really don't need hustle culture. They don't need, you need to scale. It's build sustainable businesses that are helping your local flower shops, helping, the person who's done with Etsy expand their business. And so for me, that idea of helping people succeed, helping small businesses succeed, and do it in a really sustainable, humane sort of way is a lot of what we talk about. And a lot of, I think, when you look at the content we put out, it's not, life hacks. It's how to be creative, how to, develop a sustainable pipeline of word of mouth customers. That's our mission, is really helping creative professionals build sustainable businesses.
I love that. And it's so aligned with, what we're doing, because I have to say, until I think, Squarespace is the platform that we found to do this, but the whole model that we teach inside Mastery, that I wrote about in my book, that I talk about online all the time, the whole model of, 1 to 2 person branding agencies being able to scale profit and freedom is dependent largely. Some of our students do outsource or have some team, but for the most part, most of the people we work with they're doing it in their home, and maybe they have a partner. It's largely based on the ability to do a lot of things. And being able to code a custom website as it was 15 years ago, that was a whole other world of things you had to do. And the fact that that's basically obsolete is kind of the reason. I mean, it felt so serendipitous. Like it all kind of happened at the same time. And when we built this intensive model, and it was like you couldn't have done this intensive model without Squarespace. So it just feels, I mean, I always think, you know, okay, yeah, we developed this process and it's awesome and people love to learn it. But it was also this very lucky stars aligning. We happened to have started an agency a few years before. So we were in the early stages of trying to figure it out. And then we found Squarespace. And then like very soon after came to this conclusion. But it's almost like it was an obvious conclusion in retrospect.
Yeah, I mean, I love that story. A really common story I heard in those early days, and I still hear a lot, is so who is in the Circle program? Who are our pro users? It's I'll call them traditional web developers. A lot of people who kind of started out in either hand coding HTML or WordPress devs, and they'll still do WordPress sites when it's appropriate. And you know, and I always say it wouldn't be a win for us or for our pro users if every single one of their projects came to Squarespace, because there's some projects that are just not good fits for us, and that's not a good outcome to bring the wrong type of project to the platform. Agreed. But if it's the right project, we want it here. So the common story I would hear, so there's the web developer, and they were looking for, you know, maybe the story there is, you know, I usually charge $50,000 for a project, but there was a client who wanted a $10,000 project, and I thought, you know, I can't maybe do exactly what I would do on WordPress, but I can get close enough and I can do it a lot faster and it's still economical at that price point. So that was sort of one journey. Another journey was I'm a graphic designer. I needed a portfolio website. I built it on Squarespace and the light bulb goes off in their head like, I guess I'm a web developer now. And to your point, it's, and the story I try to tell those people is like, once you've, and you know this, like once you've got the client and you're selling them the branding solution, why not also sell them other things that they need, that they really need? And you become the one-stop shop, and you know the ratio of the amount of effort it takes you to find your client versus how much they're paying you, like that balance gets improved. Right. And you didn't have to increase your overhead because you didn't have to go hire a bunch of people. And you know, if we're doing our job, you're feeling really well supported and like you know what you're doing. And if you get stuck, you know who to talk to on those client projects.
Yep. Absolutely. And it actually enabled people to become, I mean, I had a hard time figuring out what to call us, right? But it's like a one-person agency. Why are you an agency and not a freelancer? Because you're actually leading the project and taking care of the entire thing. To your point, if you're doing all of this stuff, why wouldn't you do the website? They need the website. It's just part of it.
Exactly. It's part of it. It is. And again, you know, 15 years ago, it was not available for you. You had to hand off those flat files for them to bring to their web designer. That was the way the world was. But that's just not where we're at anymore. And and I think it's, we just have a lot of, I'll call them non-technical people. And also, I would say like marketers, copywriters, anyone who's working with small businesses, their sort of mindset and their skills are applicable when it comes to putting together a website. Yeah, we see a lot of that.
I find myself encouraging some of my students who are, they're website phobic because of they had been doing websites in the previous way with a developer or maybe even by themselves, but the projects took too long. And I find myself with this smaller group of people like encouraging them, like, come back. It's really better, like with a better process.
I mean, if there's one thing I've learned from Circle members, from our pro users, it's process. And the process is the thing that lets you free up your time to do the creative strategic work. But if your process is no good, you're really going to have a hard time talking. I mean, going back to like the sustainability thing, you're going to have a hard time building a sustainable business if each and every time you're working with a client, you're figuring it out from scratch.
Thank you very much. Say it louder for the people in the back. It's about that systematizing. And I think the big thing that creatives don't get is systematize, have a framework and a process. That doesn't mean you can't be uber creative and custom within the framework. It's kind of the balance of the two.
I'm a big believer, like I think even as a business person, the thing I feel like I owe my team is a really clear, sharp structure. And within that, be as creative as you want to be, and you can feel confident with your creativity. You can feel confident coming to me with your creative out there idea if it fits within the structure. It's not even an attention. That's sort of the enabling thing. Like, come along and tell me your craziest idea. And if it sort of, we're really clear on what we're trying to accomplish, how much we can invest, we kind of have like our structure of way of thinking about it. Yeah. And if it meets those markers, then good, we should go for it. And that's the opportunity. So the creativity, I think, in the same way that, whatever, like the sonnet poetic form, the creativity is how do you work within the form? It's sort of really a boon to creativity. I think, giving yourself really good processes to work within is a boon to creativity. And I just totally agree with that.
Yeah. And side note to our listeners, this is very parallel to the guardrails we talk about putting in place for your clients, because when you give clients that structure and then give them a little bit of choice, it's very easy for them to say yes, so that we get rid of all that BS, where they make the projects drag on, which is a huge profit killer, my experience. So you mentioned the forum a couple of times. You guys have this thing. It's called the Circle Forum. Yeah. I'm inside it. It's a community platform developed for people who make a living selling websites. Can you tell me more about what it is and what
let me tell you about
in there?
Yeah, let me tell you about the Circle program, and then the forum's a big part of it.
Okay.
So I work at Squarespace. Yeah. I run our pro user business. Sort of the core of our pro user business is a program that we call Circle. To get into the Circle program, you need to have built 3 websites, and then you get an invitation from us. You agree to some terms, which is basically an NDA, so we can tell you more about, like, kind of be more insidery in terms of talking about the platform. And what we give you as a Circle member is all sorts of perks and benefits: discounts, extended trials, release notes, early access to features, and really, I'd say maybe like the crown jewel of the perks is access to the members only forum. And it's, it's kind of an old fashioned forum where people are asking questions or asking for feedback on a thing and discussing. And it's, going back, and I've mentioned a couple of times, going back to those customer interviews 8 years ago, a big thing that people were missing was, it was like, I love your software. It's really changed my business, but I feel really alone in this. And a core of what we've done, and if you were to look at sort of our internal sort of brand guidelines, like what do we stand for? It's really community. I think it's been a real strength and differentiator for us. I think it's why people get a lot of value out of it. And so the forum is a big part of where that community happens. There's, thousands of Circle members logging in. As with most communities, most of them are just sort of lurking and watching and reading. But people ask questions, and it's like the nicest place on the internet. It's really not zero sum. People are not, guarding their secrets. They're not flaming each other. They're just, I think the consensus all around is there's like enough work to go around, and sort of the vibrancy of the community is really a big positive.
That's what I love about, you're calling them pro users, like pro users being these small businesses who are helping other small businesses because of the business model of a small agency who doesn't even want more than a certain number of clients a year, right? That's kind of the whole point. You get to be really giving and have that there's not zero sum. We're all, a rising tide lifts all boats. It's not like big companies that are trying to get a slice of the market. It's like there is more than enough to go around.
I mean, going back, you've got to pick your market. You've got to be really crisp and clear to be consistent with your lead generation. Otherwise, it's going to be, you need your processes to get your clients. But the way you're going to get them is not by out hustling the Circle member next to you. It's going to be by doing the things right. Yeah, so the forum is where a lot of the community happens. And I know you've been in there lately. I think it's really, because it's not consumers, the conversation is pretty elevated, which I think can occasionally be a little bit intimidating to new members. You come in and people are talking about, it's not super jargony, but until you don't know. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just a really constructive and supportive community.
Amazing. And are you saying that there are conversations going on in there about things that are tangential to the website, like the lead gen and...
Yeah, what was clear to me early on is that we, Squarespace, it's our job to make a really intuitive product and to support the product really well. And we can be really experts on that. What we were never going to be experts on was sort of the practice of being a Squarespace pro. How do you find clients? What is your process? Because again, that's just not what we do. And so it seemed, again, obviously that but it seemed like people needed that. So the only people with real authority on that are people who I think are practitioners. I can come in and tell you what I've heard over 8 years, but it's going to be much less authoritative and interesting than if you come along and say it. So yeah, so some of the conversations are, I'm trying to accomplish X, Y, Z in Squarespace on a technical level. I can't figure out how to do it. Does anybody know how to do it? Some of it is that. And some of it is, my client stiffed me. What do you all do when a client stiffs you? And trying to, as an example of, it's about the business of building websites on Squarespace, but it's not about the narrow question of technically, again, how do I push the buttons in the right order to get the thing? It's how do I run a sustainable business, which is so much more than the technology and the software.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's nice to connect with other people who are using the same software because it does give you a certain degree of control over your business when you're using this kind of software as opposed to something else.
I mean, it's also, objection handling. I've got a client, they just are insistent that they really want to be on WordPress. The joke I say is, you're talking to the client and they say, my nephew told me I need to be on WordPress. Why are you putting me on Squarespace? Like, what is your response to that? We need to support them to help them respond to that. But again, the Circle members have collectively had that conversation hundreds of thousands of times of why Squarespace and the way they talk about it. They've figured out how to talk about it, how to resonate with different types of customers. And again, that's the kind of thing that we know how to sell Squarespace to consumers really well. That's what we've been doing for 20 years. But the practitioners know how to sell Squarespace to clients. And I think they're always going to have better answers on the practice of Squarespace than we possibly can.
Oh my God, I'm going into the forum and finding that question. I love answering that question. But also, after this call, I'm going to email you the blog article I wrote. I think it was in 2013. I thought I was very funny. I compared Squarespace and WordPress to PC versus a Mac. And then at the end, I had two little buttons and it said, I'm a PC, I'm a Mac. And if you clicked the PC, it just went to like a page of code. And if you clicked I forget what awesome thing happened when you clicked the Mac. But I thought I was very clever. And that's kind of how I describe it. It's like, well, are you trying to be like stuck in the dark ages or what? You don't want to be able to, use your own website? Silly. Tell me a little bit more about, you've got a big event coming up. Is that right?
Yes.
This is coming out on August 29th. If you guys are listening to it right when it came out, August 29th. And you have an event coming up in 2 weeks?
2 weeks, yeah. 2.5 weeks. September 18th is our 4th annual Circle Day. And it's our user conference, and it's a whole day here at our office in New York. It's streamed live, so you can attend virtually. And this year we're doing these, I'm very excited, we're calling it World Loop. We're doing these kind of encore broadcasts of the event. So people in, Australia and Asia and New Zealand, they could watch it on a time zone that makes that sense to them. And then as Europe wakes up, they'll watch it so you can sort of connect with other Circle members and other attendees while it's happening. But, going back to how practitioner-led what we do, our content has been, and sort of how we really, I think, foreground the community. The presenters at Circle Day, it's going to be Anthony, our CEO, Paul, our CPO, Kinjal, our CMO, but also it's going to be a bunch of Circle members who are experts in their topic. And it's really just consistent with how we've thought about content and how we thought about sharing expertise, which is, again, we're expert on our product, we're expert on being a public company or whatever we're good at. But when it comes to the business of Squarespace, we really love to have Circle members be able to leverage their expertise for everybody else. So yeah, it's in New York. It's going to be great. We've got great stuff to make the virtual experience really great also. And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, and it's at your offices in New York?
It's at our office in
West Village?
In the West Village.
Doesn't get cooler than that.
I come to the office 2 or 3 days a week, and like I say to everybody, it's a nice place to come to work. If you're going to show up, to pop up at the West 4th stop a couple days a week is pretty nice.
Hell yeah. And you've got some nice little goodies for our friends here.
Yes.
You brought some gifts?
Yes. So the Circle Day in-person experience, that's one at the office, is only available to Circle members. So you have to be a Circle member to join. We sold out on those tickets, or those were all claimed within 2 days when we launched the site back in June. But because we love this audience, if you are a Circle member and you email Pia, she has a bunch of in-person passes to pass along to you. So if you can make it to Squarespace on September 18th, let Pia know and we will get you passes. I think we said up to 10. So get that in fast.
Yeah, I'm going to do you one better. You have to write a review for this podcast, and I will hook you up, and I'll be there. So if you're listening to this and you want to hang out with me at Circle Day, go write a review for this podcast right now, and then contact me. And
that is really well done. But and also, I'll just say, even if you're not in Circle, so if you're not in Circle, you don't get to join us live in New York, but you can join for the virtual or for the World Loop. So go to we're going to figure
NoBSCircleDay.com.
NoBSCircleDay.com. That'll take you to the Circle Day website. You can scroll down to the registration. It's a very nice page. We did a great job with the branding. Pia, I'll be interested in your comments later.
I'm sure I'll be
And we would love to have, and we, I think what's really exciting about this, so the in-person event's only for Circle members. The online event is for anybody. So if you're Squarespace curious, if you're a little bit earlier in your journey and you're not yet eligible to join Circle, we would love to have you join us, meet the community, learn some stuff. It's going to be a really fun day.
Very cool. I'm super excited to come to that. I'm super excited to see some of you listeners there, although my audience is all over the country and the world. So it's a percentage of them that are around, but I'm sure some of them will want to come hang out. And anybody who's listening, whether you're on Squarespace or not, go to nobscircleday.com and get a ticket to the virtual, because I know there's going to be some really, really valuable stuff in there. And if you're not on Squarespace yet, this might tip the scales, if I haven't already, every time I freaking mention it on this podcast. What are you doing, guys? You guys are falling behind. Get on the Squarespace wagon. Okay, that's amazing. Did you have one more gift for us?
Yes, we would also, if you are not yet on the Squarespace wagon, we want to offer your listeners 10% off your next subscription, and that's NoBS10 will be the promo code to check at checkout. So that's NoBS10.
Boom. NoBS10, 10% off. You have to try it because we've been using it for, it's at least 12 years now. So, we never strayed. Like I say to people, a really lovely thing about working at Squarespace is I run into customers and subscribers all the time. And what I always say is, on behalf of my family, thank you so much. I hope you're having a great experience. Totally. You could just tell that they care about the people using it. And I think that matters a lot. I think a really interesting thing as part of the evolution of the company as we've gotten larger is we've really beefed up our user research team over the years. And I think we are at a point now, even though we're as big as we've ever been or bigger than we've ever been, yeah. I think we've got our finger on the pulse and are listening to users about maybe better than we ever have. And I think it's really a testament to where we're investing our time and effort and sort of how we're trying to learn. Talk to the users. I hear you. I'm building this community in NoBS Mastery, and it's like a constant cycle of getting user feedback and how do we tweak and how do we make this even better experience. And so I love that you guys do that too. It's so important. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on. It's been so fun reconnecting, like hearing how far you've taken this business and what you guys are up to, and lifelong fans here of Squarespace. So send my regards to, is it Anthony? It's Anthony. I'll pass along to Anthony, and thank you so much for having me. I'm also really glad that we've reconnected, and thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. Amazing. Thanks, Jeremy. Talk to you soon. Bye.